Hello, everybody. This is Adele Bernard from Transition Clarity, and we're here having another authentic conversation. I'm going to ask again if you can like, subscribe, leave comments, because without you guys, we wouldn't have shows. And so I'm happy to keep the show going, and I'm excited to share all the different guests. So today, I'm happy to introduce you to Paul Kirch. He hosted a Dallas based radio show and a top 10 business podcast show, Bossacademy Radio, which has led to founding of Bossacademy, an entrepreneurial accelerator success platform designed to give small business leaders and entrepreneurs a real business ownership, success strategies, hence Boss. Through the amazing community, Paul delivers resources and opportunities to members which accelerate business and professional growth in an empowering environment. An experienced coach and consultant, Paul Kirch understands that success only begins with movement. Through his program, Action Over Analysis, he helps entrepreneurs and business leaders become empowered as he helps them avoid analysis paralysis. In addition, he is a certified behavioral expert, leveraging DISC and motives assessments tools to help individuals understand what drives their own behaviors and the behaviors of those around them, and how to adapt to build a better relationship. He is also a contributor to the business learning application called Advisor, which is a value added partner of Boss Academy, featured among experts such as Seth Godin, Guy Kowalski. He provides insights on sales, business management, and entrepreneurship. Boss Academy is ultimate entrepreneurial success platform with the tools, tips, and resources to help you flourish as entrepreneurs or small business leaders. We invite you to become part of our community of purpose driven leaders by visiting bossacademy.com. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Paul Kirch. Hello, Paul. I'm glad you came to the show today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Adele. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you because, like, this used to be your world. Now I'm playing in it.
Mm. It's a fun world, so enjoy it.
So, okay, so let's start with that. Like, how did Paul become Boss Academy? Like, give us some backstory. How did you become where you are today?
I'll give you the really shortened version. I
Okay.
was There was a networking event that was taking place. It was hosted by a large web development company, which shall remain nameless. But during Q&A, I was answering a lot of the questions that the speaker was doing a horrible job of answering in a way that the audience understood. She was great. It just she was talking over their heads. And afterwards, somebody approached me and said, "Hey, I'm the general manager of a radio station in Dallas. Would you ever consider coming on one of our shows as a guest?" She goes, "We've got a lot of nationally syndicated shows, but we also have some local stuff." And I said, "Absolutely." So I gave her my card, thinking I'd never hear from her. A week later, she called me and says, "Hey, we looked you up, and after hearing you talk, we wanted to know if you would be interested in your own show." And I thought, well, that's crazy. So she offered me a drive time slot on, I think it was Monday nights. And so I started driving over to uh, between Fort Worth and Dallas and hosting this live radio show every week, and ended up being a blast. But none of my clients were local. So I ended up moving to podcasting in 2015. And in 2017, I ended up on a top 10 business podcast list. So the show in itself was successful. Boss always stood for business ownership success strategies. I was going through a divorce at the time and I wanted to focus more time on my kids, so I stopped the show. But coming through the pandemic, I really wanted to get back in a better frame of mind. And so I thought about getting back involved in a mastermind I was previously part of. And friend of mine says, Boss Academy has always been this passion project. Why don't you relaunch Boss Academy as a mastermind? And I said, yeah, I've been thinking about that. That's a great idea. And so I did. So in 2021, I launched this weekly mastermind group, and it's been going nonstop since. And today we're really impacting a lot of lives, and it's such a blessing. And having you be a part of our community is just an honor.
Well, and I'm glad to have the invite because I only learned about you through Brian and
Oh, Brian
you
Gregory, yeah.
yeah, and you guys have been collaborating and friends and and I'm like, who are all these people? This is fascinating. Like and
Yeah, you're talking about Brian Gregory, the
yeah.
CEO of Admanity, and it's interesting. He was invited. Oh, I want to say it was like the third week of our group that we were doing these weekly calls, maybe third or fourth week, and he joined and was talking about this amazing assessment tool that he had created, and I thought, wow, this is really neat. I would like to get him more involved, and he started contributing, and then he started giving away the assessment to all of our members. And next thing you know, here we are 3 years later. I'm working with his company, helping do some marketing consultation, and he's a sponsor in Boss Academy. And it's just really amazing to
Yeah.
see how that relationship is fostered just through that one chance meeting where he came to a meeting and liked what we did.
Well, and to be honest, I have no idea how I got to you.
I don't either. I don't either.
I don't know.
Divine
But
intervention, maybe.
well, yeah, I don't know. It was like, okay, I'll come. And then yeah, it's been great. It's been if anyone for the people who are listening, Boss Academy is that little hub that has all the experts in that you don't know you need. That's how
That's a
I looked at
that's
it.
a great way of putting it. Yeah, we
Because I was like, when I first came, I'm like, I'm not saying a word. And then I came back again and I'm like, I'll just listen. And if anyone knows me, I don't do that very often. I'm a talker. But I had to feel my way into who was in that room.
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because there are some people who are more reserved. I had this vision when I started it because I've been a part of mastermind groups with some pretty alpha people, and I expected everybody was going to be coming in sharing their problems. We'd troubleshoot, and it was going to be like this amazing place where we helped each other from that perspective. But I learned that, we have an amazing purpose driven leadership, but I learned that not everybody jumps into it feeling like they A, know where to start. So maybe that's on me, but also B, they want to, like you said, kind of feel it out, see who's there, and they listen.
Mhm.
And then when they do speak up, sometimes I find that there's some experts hidden in there that I didn't know existed because until they speak up. So I'm always respectful. If somebody doesn't seem like they want to get engaged by talking, I let them kind of sit back and be more passive. Sometimes I'll call on people. But,
And it's
when
not
you
even
started
that,
contributing, it was amazing.
yeah, like it's not even that we're being passive. It's just um for me, like as a person who feels energy, I had to feel what this was gonna be like. And I'm like,
Yeah,
and the few times when I first started, like there was powerful conversations that I
it's
just
true.
wanted to learn more of who was speaking, and I was like, cool. And then as I'm getting to know people like outside of the group, like in conversation, I'm like this is like we're all coming together for a reason, and I think the reason's still forming. You could tell
Yeah,
me
that's
wrong,
good. That's
owning the group, but I'm just saying because the world is changing so much and so fast, especially this month. Like we're being catapulted crazily this month. And I think a safe space. Like I can't remember who it was, but with her mom, right? And like it showed the human side of it all too.
Yeah.
Like you're having problems in your personal life. We're still here for you. It doesn't have to
Well,
be a business question, right? Like, and that's what I like. Is
I don't know if you were there at the beginning of the year, but back in January, David Schneer had a tragic accident, and he was fighting tooth and nail to not end up in a wheelchair, and so he was having to go through this very dangerous surgery on his neck, and they were actually going through the front, and had to move all of his voice box and esophagus out of the way to do the surgery, which to me just sounds awful. And we had a moment of silence for him. He came on, and it was just the day before he was going into surgery, and a bunch of people prayed, a bunch of people just kind of gave him positive vibes, and then he stayed on after that call, and there was tears, and it's like it's so funny looking back to when this started 3 years ago. I went into it thinking I want to help myself get my business. Now it's like I'm just every week I just get excited about helping other people shine. And
well, and I like, and that when you say that, because I've always felt myself as the connector. Everyone called me to who was in my Rolodex.
yeah,
And then I
I
kind of
can relate.
forgot that, right? I forgot that part of like, you're here to connect, right? And then I love the saying of like, give, 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 get, give, give. I'm like, right. So
Yeah, I had a
share,
boss years ago who said always be a resource, and
yeah.
that was something that just changed the way that I lived. I remember I often tell this story, so if you've heard it, I apologize, but there was a gentleman. I was in sales at the time. There was a gentleman who wanted me to fly from Seattle down to LA to meet with him to talk about business, and so I scheduled a couple days worth of meetings and went and took him to lunch, and I was ready, man. I couldn't wait for this business meeting, and I was going to ask him all these questions, and I had all these ideas. And he sits down and he goes, "Hey, Paul," he goes, I really appreciate you, and I just want you to know that I don't really have any opportunities for you." And my first thought was, what are we meeting for? And I thought maybe he was going to offer me a job or something. And he
Hmm.
goes, "Well," he goes, "I'm job hunting. And I know you know a lot of people." So he goes, "I apologize, but this was the best way I knew I could get some time with you. Would you help me?" And my first instinct was to be mad. Why did this
Yeah.
guy waste my time? How disrespectful. But then I remembered what my boss had always said, be a resource. And so I said, "Okay, sure. Let me see your resume." I looked at it, and I remembered being kind of like a little heated at first. And I'm looking at his resume, and I'm like, oh man, I know somebody who needs him. And so after the meeting, I made a call and found out that this person that I knew was still looking for somebody. They called him, set up an interview. He interviewed for the position, got the job, ended up following me for years, sending me business, sending me opportunities. And that all happened because I chose to be a resource in that moment. And that's what you're talking about, being,
Yeah.
giving.
Yeah. Well, and it's like even like um a little example I had the other day of I have a friend who didn't want to drive somewhere, and I was like, "Hey man, how do I even want to go?" And then fine, I'll go because I said that I'd pick her up. I'm like, "Ah, whatever," right? And she was so appreciative because she really doesn't like driving, right? And then she didn't know where we're going, and it's in the middle of this hill, right? Like, well, which entrance are you gonna pick? There's seven, right? And and then she's like, "How do you know everybody?" And I'm like, "I don't know." We just kind of known each other for years and years and go in
Yeah.
between different groups and so it just kind of took me back because she's a high school friend, right? So I haven't seen her in 35 plus years, whatever, right? So it's like, hmm, I don't know, how do I know you, right? Like and then I even said, well, what made you think I could pick you up? All I did was like the event. I never said I was going, but because she prompted me, can I get a ride? I'm like, all right, I'll go.
Yeah, I heard the phrase one time that people forget what they don't know, but I switch that up and I say I think people forget what they do know. And by that, I
Yeah.
mean that she asked you a question that on the surface to her should have been a question you could answer, but it's something that you kind of take for granted. You're a connector, and you and I
Well,
are both people that make connections. I
yeah.
remember when I first started my company in 2009, I had a sales coaching and consulting agency that I started in 2009, and I wanted to sell some coaching programs online. And so I started thinking, well, I'm going to put programs on the internet and this is going to be amazing. And so I started doing a little homework. I didn't know there was this structured world of internet marketers, and I found this program through Tony Robbins. It was called Money Masters, and
Yeah.
he had interviews with people like Jeff Walker and Eben Pagan and Frank Kern and all these people that were considered internet gurus at the time. And I started studying what they taught and started learning it. And then a year later, I remember I was talking to somebody and they asked me a question that a year earlier I couldn't answer. But at that point, I knew all the answers. And I was thinking, what kind of an idiot is this person for not knowing this? And then I realized, oh, wait, a year ago, I didn't know the answer. You know,
Well,
it's like we forget that we've
yeah.
amassed all this knowledge that we take for granted that somebody else sees as this monumental experience level when we kind of take it for granted. And I think a lot of people out there fall into this trap of forgetting that they have amassed knowledge that they can put to use that somebody else would kill for.
I know. Well, I grew up with a lot of mechanical people, and my sister was here, and I go, "Your headlight's not working," and she goes, "It's not." And I'm like, "No." I go, "Pop your head," and she's like, "How do you always fix all this stuff?" I go, "I don't know. I have no idea. Another life as a mechanic, maybe."
Yeah, we tinker.
Right?
So yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was part of this mastermind group that was established through this podcasting organization I was part of, and they well, I shouldn't say mastermind group, excuse me. It was an accountability group. They would hook you up with an accountability partner, somebody who else was supposed to be at a similar level, and you had similar experience, and you were going to hold each other accountable to get tasks done. And the woman I was working with had a lot of broadcasting experience, but she'd never done any podcasting. And at the time, my show was really doing well, and I was teaching her all the nuances of setting up her show, microphone, recording, editing, and all these things. And we had been talking for a few months and on a weekly basis. And at one point she goes, "Hey, Paul, good news. I just launched a program teaching people how to podcast." And I
From
was kind
your
of like,
information.
I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, I remember being kind of like irritated. I'm like going, how are you teaching people to podcast when I'm teaching you stuff every week? And she goes, "Paul, you got to understand the people I'm working with have no experience. They've never recorded a show. They've never interviewed anybody." And so it made me realize, oh, this little light bulb popped on. I'm like going, you know what? There's always somebody who has less experience than you that you can help, as long
I
as you.
agree, but she should still be giving a lot of credit to you.
Oh, I didn't care about that because I wasn't teaching her anything that was proprietary. For me, it was more that I thought I'm teaching her how to do all this stuff, and she's out there running a course. What kind of people are getting ripped off there? But then when she pointed out to me that she was working with service companies that had never done anything like this, it made so much sense to me that the experience that she was gaining from me was something that could help her help others that were
Yeah.
learning, that were behind her. They saw her as this established expert when she was just learning.
Mhm.
So I didn't care about the credit. I mean, maybe I could have been irritated by that. I was more taken aback by the fact that it's like, well, this person isn't qualified to teach anybody. Well, she was. She was qualified to teach people that knew less than her.
Well, and that happened to me the other day. Like, I was on somebody's podcast and she was saying, "Oh, this is starting to be too time consuming." I go, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Zoom's making it easier than ever." And she goes, "How?" I go, "Share your screen." And I go, "Click, click, click." And I go, "Easy peasy." And she texts me like maybe 20 minutes later and she's just like, "That took 3 minutes." I go, "I know. Isn't it easy?" Like, you just got to have the right buttons clicked, because, and that's the other thing of technology, right? Is they're all trying to vie for your attention to get your money to, and they're making everything just easier and faster and free. And I'm like, why would you ever buy the platform? Like, I don't know what I'm missing in a paid platform.
Yeah.
I don't know, because they're making the paid, like say Chat GPT, right? I was always on the free one. Well, now they give me the four. I don't know what's above four. I'm happy to have four.
Well, that's a massive change. Chat GPT versus Chat GPT 4. GPT 4 actually has web integration. So on regular Chat GPT, you couldn't just dump in a website and say, comb this website and help me develop a message for this company. Now with GPT-4, you can pull in web content, you can upload files. It's actually a massive change,
Yeah.
and I understand what you're saying. I think sometimes the free version of platforms is all you need. But it depends on what you're wanting to do. I can tell you that I had paid platforms when I was doing my top 10 business podcast, and I would not have had I not had certain platforms like Libsyn and some of the editing software that I used. But I'm with you. If you don't need to spend the money and there's tools out there to do it, then
And I'm not saying
explore
like,
it.
you know, next year if I'm still doing the show that it's not going to be on a paid platform and it's going to be all, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, if it's working,
Like I
why
just
change
keep
it?
on, like I said, I wasn't doing the podcast. My guidance said you are, and I'm like, okay. Then I tried quitting it for 6, 7 months, and it's like, are you ready yet? And I'm like, I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. I never look for a guest again. Well, just to let everyone know, this is being recorded in August. It'll be out in October ish.
Nice.
I've never looked for another guest because that was the contract that I made with my guides. I'm never looking for another person. And now I'm like, can we tone that back a bit? Because it's like I love that I don't have to look for guests, but I also want the conversation to be relevant.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
interesting.
changing so fast right now that it's like, holy, like what I was saying, what even I was saying 2 months ago, I'm not saying now. I've changed what I'm saying. So,
Yeah, and that's interesting because you say you're not looking for guests, but you're looking for opportunities when you talk to people, and that's brilliant. And
yeah,
that's what we should be doing as you're networking. If I'm talking to somebody there's a lot of times people, their first instinct is to give you a sales pitch, right? It's like, well, I want to tell you what I do. And I always want to have a get to know you call.
yeah,
Hopefully, no pitch. Of course, I want to tell you what I do, but I don't want to have you feel like you're being sold. Jeffrey Gitomer, who wrote the Little Book, Red Book of Selling, the Sales Bible, he's authored a lot of books, and he always says people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And I think that's so true. And often we feel like we have to force people to want to hear our message when that's the opposite of what we need to be doing. We need to be asking questions, get them engaged, and get them interested in an experience. So, how's my life going to be richer working with you? And that's ultimately what we want. And it's hard, especially when you want revenue coming in. Your first instinct is like, well, I don't want to miss this opportunity. I'm talking to somebody. But
uh,
invest the time, get to know people, and you'll be amazed at what you'll uncover. Like you and I mean, we had the conversation the other day, and you asked me if I'd be on your show, and it was like, that was awesome. And you probably wouldn't have asked me had we not had that conversation. But it just
well, you're on my
sometimes,
list.
well,
Brian's on
that's
my
good.
list too, but I don't know when
Yeah,
he might be a year from now. I don't know. But the thing is, it's like you touched on a great point because I'm having the conversation to see if we are even a match to be
yeah,
on the show or be a client, because I've done those clients that I take the money. Uh-uh.
yeah,
I have worked way too hard for every single dime of that dollar, and I'm not there anymore.
yeah. It comes down to,
If you're not
how
a
do you make
fit,
people feel?
yeah, if you're not a fit, I'll pass
Yeah,
you on to somebody fit, you know.
yeah. For me, if I sell somebody and it's not a fit, I don't feel right. I know there's people out there that'll take the money all day long, but I want to know that I'm serving that person. I want to know that the impact I'm making on them is going to make a difference. And if it's not, I'm probably not the right person to serve them. You want to hand me money, fine, but that's not what I want, and that's not what you want. In the end, we want to know that we're working with somebody that has our best interest at heart, who cares about our success,
Hmm.
and has the ability to help us be successful. And so that's really what I'm looking for when I'm talking to other people. Am I a fit for them? Am I the person who can serve them? And if so, what can we do to make things magical? And
Well,
that's,
and for me, it's also like if I'm in the business of helping people get through the lies they've been told, the conditioning, whatever, I have to look at when am I lying to myself? If I'm saying, okay, Paul, you got to be my customer, and it's like, but he's not a fit, I'm lying to myself. So that session or that interaction is not going to work. Like my guides won't show up. Like and it's like, interesting. And then I have to peel back the onion and say, well, you're lying to yourself. He wasn't a fit. Like, why are you trying to make it a fit?
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
true. But when you are a fit, holy Dinah.
I
Uh,
remember there was a point when I invited somebody to be a part of Bossacademy that I deep down knew it was a bad fit. And
oh,
they were so toxic. They would get on calls, and they were a person who just kind of had a contrary view on a lot of things, and they've always had a reason to push back. And if you didn't give them the right attention, they were flaming you in the chat message privately, telling you how you had disrespected them because you didn't call on them or whatever. And this went on for a while, and I finally realized, man, I'm doing more damage to my brand, my own psyche, and quite frankly, I'm not helping them be successful. So I ended up telling them that I was going to refund them, that it didn't make sense for them to be a part of Boss Academy anymore. And that was really hard, but it was also one of the most empowering things I did, because at that point I realized, you know what? I do have the ability to control how this platform grows, who grows with it. Are they a fit? If not, then they need to go, because they're going to do more damage to myself and to others.
well, and I think Gary V says that the best: hire, but fire 10 times faster.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like it's so true.
It's so true. It's so
Because
hard sometimes.
I saw that in oil and gas all the time. Well, they got to give them the 3 months. And I'm like, why? They're not working out after 2 weeks. Well, because,
Yeah.
I go, whatever. It's your gut. Like, that's why they're so old and you can't get things done. And it's like, hey, right? Like, just cut your losses. It didn't work out, you
It
know?
is hard sometimes because, you don't want to be that person who hurts people, or sometimes you feel like you're making the decision for selfish reasons, but in the end, you're 100% right. And your brand is going to be much stronger if you actually can control the type of people that participate. And especially running a community, I've never realized how hard community managers really have it. Now, we get lumped in with networking all the time. We're not a networking group, even though networking is a part of byproduct of anything where you're
Mm-hmm.
getting a bunch of people together. But the interesting thing is, I never realized how hard it is to manage a community effectively, because you do sometimes have to be the one who calls people out, or sets parameters that someone might not like it, but it's much better than the collateral damage that comes from somebody toxic being a part of what you do.
Well, and it's just like if you hire the wrong person, they know it too.
Yeah,
They're like, I gotta show up to work tomorrow. Crap, right?
yeah, exactly.
Like when people hate Monday, they're in the wrong job.
I've always said that. I've always felt that. I mean, Mondays can be tough for anybody, but absolutely, if you're not excited about what's coming on Monday morning,
Hmm.
a great example. So I was working as a sales leader for a company. I was running sales, and my wife at the time was running operations. We had gotten married when we were working together, which was interesting. And we loved it. Every day was exciting. Mondays rolled around, and we couldn't wait to get in the office. Sunday nights were always exciting. We'd talk about the week ahead. And then the owner decided to sell the company. He sold the company to a firm from Europe that micromanaged us to death, had a totally different view on culture, and overnight made it a really miserable place to work. And Sunday nights, my wife went from being happy to being in tears. And so Mondays became this toxic thing. And we were in the right job, right place until we weren't. And
Yeah.
then at that point it was like, oh my gosh. And that's actually how I started my first company, because I knew that I had to negotiate out of my contract to save my marriage at the time, because it was tough. And then I was getting job offers. I'd been in the market research industry a really long time, and I was well respected, and I kept getting job offers I was turning down. And she said, "You know what? You either need to take one of these jobs or start this company you've been talking about." So when I first started my first company, she was 8 months pregnant. Actually, when the company actually launched, we had just had my son. He was born in March, and I started the company in July 5th of 2009. So it was a crazy time,
Mhm.
but it really required me going through that place where I felt like I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want somebody else controlling my destiny,
Mhm.
to be able to find the courage to start my own company.
Well, and I know we've talked about that, like how I grew up with entrepreneurs all around me, and you
Yeah.
didn't understand what like entrepreneur what, right? Like,
Well, I grew up in a town of 365 people. My dad was a school teacher. My mom stayed home.
yeah.
And the only entrepreneurial examples were people that had struggling businesses. So I didn't really grow up around it. I had an aunt and uncle who had a very successful business, but they lived in another state, and but they were the ones who probably inspired me the most. But I was surrounded by people who kept saying, "No, don't start a company. Get a job, work for a
Right.
company, let them take care of you." And so I had this this massive internal battle, knowing that I wanted to be a business owner, but feeling like it was like the rich dad, poor dad from Robert Kiyosaki. I was definitely being told, get good grades, stay in school, get a job with a company that'll take care of you. But eventually, I realized that my destiny was helping other people in a way that
Well,
working for someone else wouldn't let me.
and how many people did do that, went to work for the big corporates, and they didn't get looked after,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
And then they're going, well, now what?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? At least with us, we know if we don't put in the work, we don't get any out of it. Like,
Well, there's that.
and
Absolutely.
and you also had the bigger why when you did start your company, because nothing's more motivating than a new screaming baby.
That is true. You know what's really interesting, Adele, is I didn't ever see myself as a creative person. The day that I said I'm going to start my own company, something changed in me where all of a sudden this floodgate of creativity came out, and I was creating programs and ideas, and I was so like fueled in a way that I had never been in my life. And I went through a tough period where that I was going through a very toxic divorce, and that disappeared for a while, and now it's back, and it's like it just there's something about being your own boss,
Mhm.
having the freedom to make mistakes that allows you to create and do things that you couldn't do otherwise.
Well, and it's interesting because I was like, I'm not creative, but I used to love coloring with my nephews, right? And I could tell like if they're having trouble. Like this is when they're little, right? Like grade two, grade three. And I'd be like looking at my one nephew going, what's going on at school? Nothing. Why? Oh, just just asking. And his pictures were all dark and gray and black, right? Where the other ones like
Yeah.
orange and reds and like vibrant. And then, I'd be putting him to bed and I'm like, everything okay at school? He's like, well, but, and he go in this big thing. And I'm like, oh, he goes, how do you know? I go, because your colors are really dark. And he's like, oh, right. And you don't think it's just play to the kids. And you're going, no, these are signs something is going on.
It's
And
interesting.
and I have a friend who's a sound musician. Like she's teaches and does sound bowls and stuff. And she used to say, well, we got a hard one. And her husband would go, what? They could tell how his day was at school, how he walked up to the house. So it's either one song or 5 songs of harsh hard rock music. He'd go get his day out in the music and then come down. Okay, I'm here. There you go. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of really fascinating studies about that, and Mozart effect and things like that, being more creative, listening to music.
Hmm.
But I can tell you that my mood often dictates my playlist. So,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
And
or
I find
sometimes
right
my
now I'm not
my
even listening to
playlist is
music.
an indication of my mood, and
Yeah.
I don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, like sometimes you just need that thrashing music just to thrash it out. And other
that's
times
right.
you just, chill, whatever. Um, yeah. So when you think of Boss Academy, where is the vision to where it goes? What's your I mean,
I used
obviously
to
you want
say
to
I
grow.
wanted to help a million entrepreneurs thrive in their business. That was such a broad definition. Today, you know, I, I I changed my mission. My mission always used to be business ownership success strategies, centered around that because that's what Boss stood for. But today, the mission is simply to help entrepreneurs reach their maximum potential. I think there's so many people out there that are self-employed. They bought into this idea that entrepreneurship is the path that prevents them from having to deal with all the corporate struggles that exist out there. But entrepreneurship, to do it right, is really hard. And there's so many people trying to do it on their own. And that is something I've done. And I can tell you it's much easier when you've got people around you that want to lift you up and support you.
Hmm.
So my goal is to create Bossacademy into a platform that continues to help entrepreneurs that want to be a part of our program to have a place where they can collaborate, learn, and grow, and not just be supported, but support others.
Hmm.
It's purpose-driven leaders that really fit in well with our organization. If you're there for just yourself, I don't think you stay long. But if you
Well,
see that it's like I can gain something from this, I can grow from this, but you know what? I can turn around and help somebody else out. Now all of a sudden we've got something.
and when you look at the leaders that either of us have followed, like they don't do it alone.
Mm-mm.
They have that core team that it's like,
Yeah.
let me bounce this idea off you. Is it stupid or is it just it's in my head it's stupid? Or is this a great idea? Should we run with it? And then you get that person that you
Yeah.
trust who gives you the pros and cons to say, maybe, maybe not. Like, right? And
Well, but it's interesting you say that because our community is always centered around our Friday mastermind call, which is it's an amazing group of people. But now, by the time this launches, our alignable group will have grown to probably several thousand members, and we have an amazing community on alignable that Boss Academy is on, bringing content and leadership opportunities to that audience. And the people that are a part of our core mastermind group on Fridays,
mhm.
many of them are going to be the content creators, the leaders, the workshop coaches that are making an impact. So you're right. I don't have to do it on my own because now I've built this core group of people that I trust. I know they're thoughtful leaders. I know they've got incredible experience. We still vet, still pick and choose who is going to contribute, but that's where we farm a lot of our speaking engagements and workshops from is our core group, and then we bring
Mhm.
in speakers from the outside that we think are valuable. So
Mhm.
I don't have to do it on my own, and it's a beautiful place.
Well, and it was funny because someone kind of busted me the other day when like, when you're out in the forefront of being the owner, right? And it was just like, you don't like doing your own back end. And I'm like, no, that's not my role anymore. I was the back end when I worked
Yeah.
corporate. I was the one holding up the matrix and like making sure everyone was getting everything done. And I'm like, yeah, like, and it was interesting because he nailed me, and I was like, oh, I gotta start putting back end time slots in my calendar.
Well, so there's the philosophy of working on your business versus working in your business. Uh, and Keith Cunningham, who is a brilliant
I
business
love
coach,
Keith.
he's one of Tony Robbins' uh, coaches on his business mastery program out of Austin. He has a company called Keys to the Vault. Keith is brilliant, And Keith gets really irritated when people say, "Well, I'm not working in my business. I'm working on my business." He goes, "You're a damn fool if you don't work in your business as well." He says, because the people who don't work in their business lose sight of what's happening in their business. And he goes, the next thing you know, they're getting caught off guard by this and that. And I thought it was really brilliant because I think you want to get to a point where you can offload some of those things. But if you aren't overseeing it, you aren't deeply involved in what's happening, you are going to get yourself in trouble. That's why larger companies have, they have mid-level management, they have tiers of operation. Once they reach a certain size, there's a book called Ready, Fire, Aim, which does a brilliant job of talking about, as companies scale, why there has to be different management structures.
Hmm.
But when you're small, when you're a solopreneur and entrepreneur, you darn well better be still involved in what's happening on all ends of your business, or you are going to be in trouble. Unless you've
Well,
got people you can trust to manage that, but they're still going to be reporting to you.
I know, but I always look at it this way. No point in hiring somebody to do something that you don't know how to do, because one day they're going to call in sick or go on vacation and you're going to go, I have no
Yeah.
idea what they do.
I have a friend who has a VA business. He not teaches, but he brings in virtual assistants to companies. And he's built an incredible brand. He built it up from nothing to, he's been offered well over, I think something like $1.6 million for a small company that is mostly virtual assistants. But he did something really smart. He built structure into every single role. He had every position, everything that was being done had to be documented
Mhm.
so that if somebody was out, somebody else could pick up the slack. Somebody was hired, now all of a sudden we've got a playbook in terms of how we bring them on board. And it took him a while, but once he did, he had us a company that's somewhat bulletproof, and I think it's scaled much larger than even where he was offered the 1.6 about a year ago. And a lot of that has happened because he has built this company up with a really solid structure when it was just him running everything, and then he started bringing other people. Now today he's got a very scalable business.
Yeah. Well, and when I work corporate, that like I always did projects. I didn't commit to full time anywhere. And so every time I left a project, they had a binder, binder.
Yeah,
And then before I even knew this, I got involved with one company for the ISO certification.
yeah,
And they're like, "Can you help us?" I'm like, "Sure." Right. So I committed, and um, the vice president of the parent company said, "No pressure, but this is our last and final shot." I'm like, I go, "Are you trying to make me laugh?" Or like, I said, what do you mean no pressure? He goes, "Well, the parent company got it, but the manufacturing company keeps failing, and this is their last shot." And I'm like, okay, no pressure.
yeah. No pressure at all.
Yeah, but we got it.
That's
Because I
good.
ran around and talked to every manager going, "Okay, what do you do?" What? And they go, "I don't know." And I go, "Figure it out. I need every single last detail. So if you don't show up to work tomorrow, any person can come off the floor and do your job." And they're just like, you could see the steam coming out, right? Going, "I don't know. I just do my job." Yeah. But
Yeah,
it was an eye opener because I was doing that without even knowing it. That I just, this is how you onboard, this is how you do this is right. And whether it's the entrepreneur in me, I don't know. But now, like I said, I flip to the front, the owner, I'm forgetting about, well, the binder still has to be built. Well, I'll get to it sometime.
yeah. Systemization of businesses is underrated. And
Oh, big
even when
time.
I had my podcast, so I was doing editing. You said you don't really edit,
Yeah.
which is fine. But I had a system when I had a professional editor working with me. I always wanted to make sure that I was passing off something they could use. So I was recorded on two separate channels. So my voice was on one, the guest was on another, so that they could be edited separately. So there's any crosstalk. But I had a checklist every time I would record, that even the simplest little things like, make sure the soundboard's on, or make sure this is on, because it took all the stress out of the whole process. And it's like every episode I knew if I did these 5 things, 6 things, that the show was going to be recorded seamlessly. And it was. And it's like every episode turned out really having great sound because we were able to make sure that upfront everything was just checked off the list. And when I didn't have that system in place, things fell through the cracks. So it's like it's a simple thing. But even just putting checklists in place can make your life easier.
Well, and that was one of the things for me because well, it's not that I won't edit. I just haven't figured out how to. So it's on the list one day. I was like, well, how do I do this? Because I don't want to talk with you on. And then I said, well, I'm going to try. So I did the preload. I put pause and I'm like, okay. And I'll put pause and I'll do the end of the show. I'm like, there's my editing. Boom. I love
There
these
you go.
buttons. Right? But it's just, you don't know what you don't know until you try. Right?
Absolutely.
And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you haven't lost anything.
That's right.
And that's the thing with even with this podcast or whatever you want to call it, because someone said it wasn't a podcast using Zoom. I'm like, whatever. Next. Like,
Listen, I watch uh, there's a company out of Austin that runs a weekly podcast. They call theirs a podcast, and it's a 2.5 hour long live show that they record. Everything's called a podcast these days if it's
yeah.
short form. So yeah, this is definitely a podcast.
Well, or call it a show or call it a get together, like an
Yeah,
authentic conversation, which that's what it is. And
exactly.
but it's also like that's where it comes back to who is your group, right? We don't care what you want to call it. Just don't call us late for dinner. If you want to say it's not a podcast, that's up to you. You won't be
That's
called to
right.
dinner, right?
Well, we all need our tribe. We all need our people that are in our corner and that support us on our journey. And if we don't have that, it's a tough road.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and
I've done it. I tried. There was a period in time where I was pretty. I wasn't in a great frame of mind, and so it's like I kind of went into self-preservation mode. I didn't want to talk to anybody about what I was going through, and I kind of just kept to myself, and I tried to do everything myself. Man, those were the darkest times. And then when I created Bossacademy and I started that up, I even in the beginning of that, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to make myself the star of the show. I want everybody else to be the star of the show. I was kind of hiding from myself at the time, and it worked great because I let other people shine.
mhm.
But over time, I realized that I was letting people down by not bringing out my greatness. And so it's like I have to bring my greatness to it, and have to extract the greatness of those who attend. And if I don't do that, then I'm shortchanging everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, because the leader has to lead.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I thought I could hide from it, because I was that's where my mindset was.
Yeah.
And thank God I actually it's through Bossacademy. I've been surrounded by people that knew that I was not at my best, and they worked with me and helped me get through a difficult period. And man, it's like everything's so much richer now
Yeah.
because I've been surrounded by people who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself.
Well, that's the whole point.
That's
Have to
right.
be human beings instead of human doings.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely. I love
And
that.
it reminds me of like I was at a conference and we were in teams doing this stuff and everyone said I had to be the leader and I'm like, why am I the leader? Because we nominated whatever. Well, long and short, my team won the contest and stuff, right? So I'm at the front of the row. So I step out and let everyone go up on the stage and he's like, did everyone see what she just did? Like, and I'm like, okay, what's the big deal? And and he's like, you let everyone come up ahead of you. And I go, well, yeah. And he's like, why? And I go, because I'm nothing without them. A leader has to have somebody with them to be leading. Like, so if you
Yeah.
don't let your team get recognized first and you come in after, like, okay. And it was just interesting how they were quite surprised. And I was like,
You can lead from behind, and I
but I
think that
wasn't
that's
leading from behind. I just let them go up on stage first.
yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
right? Like everyone in the room of 350 people saw my struggle of the leadership part of it because like all the stuff was working for everyone else, but mine wasn't working. I'm like, ah, right? And then they just like supported. I'm like, okay, good. And to this day, we're still all friends. So hey, what do I know?
It's all good.
Because we make the connections, right? It's not about the task. And I think like getting back to the tiers of, do you have the right people in place? Do you have the right? I remember Oprah Winfrey saying, I don't care how big my company gets, a check will never go out of this building without my signature. I was like, you haven't delegated that yet? And she says, no, because I
Mm.
want to know what we're paying all the time. Is this expense needed? Explain to me why we're using this and not that. And I was like, wow.
There's a good and bad to that, though. I'm going to give the other side of that. I've worked in organizations where leadership couldn't let go of their control, and I'm working with somebody right now that it's kind of a problem in their organization. They have somebody at the top who can't relinquish control,
Mm-hmm.
and it prevents other people from shining. It prevents things from getting done efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
If she's on a plane or she's traveling and that check's got a set, but somebody's 90 days overdue on
Oh,
being paid.
mm-hmm.
So I think it's a fine line. Once you reach a certain level, you do need to be able to delegate and trust. It doesn't mean you take your hands off it. It just
Yeah.
means that you let somebody else be
No,
involved
and,
in that.
and from my understanding, it wasn't that she sat down and wrote every check, but she was aware of what expenses were going out to who, right? Like
Yeah.
that. I think it was more the general, like she's not doing every check. She's not, fine tooth combing every expense, but she kind of has an
Be
idea.
surprised if she's not, though, because from what I know of her, she tends to be very hands-on, and we'll say controlling. That might be one nice way of putting it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter in the end. If you've got a team, trust your team, give them the tools to be successful. That's why systematization is great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've had business partners that I trusted too openly and then ended up regretting it. I had
Oh,
somebody
we've
who
all
was,
been there.
yeah, I don't know about that. I've had two business partners, one who was taking clients that he should not have been. I found out after I had removed him from the company for breach of contract. And those things, they leave a mark because it's like you're going, okay, this is somebody I fully trusted to grow this brand with me. So
Yeah.
you've always got to be aware of what's happening. And that was
Well,
a great lesson for me because I didn't necessarily need to micromanage him, but I sure should have known what he was doing with his time,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, like it happens with everything. I mean, it even can be in friendships of like you thought they were like a really good friend, and then you're going, that wasn't
Yeah.
cool,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like
Yeah.
the old saying, keep your enemies close. There's a reason,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
like there's
Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. Yeah, no,
yeah,
absolutely.
and I mean, all the books say if you get three really really good friends in your lifetime, you're a wealthy person.
Yeah, that's true.
You have lots of acquaintances, lots of close people, but those like do or dies, like never fail, like call in the 3 in the morning, they'll answer, few and far between,
Yeah.
even if you get them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
That's right.
and so that's why I like about like bringing it back to boss is that just the conversations I've had, just the conversations I've been um, privileged to be part of, even if I'm not talking, I'm just listening. I'm like, we have that. We're building that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that everybody gets along with everybody like perfectly, but it's like you can see this shifting, you can see this swing, you can,
Yeah,
you
I'll give
know,
a great example. There's a woman in our group that's an incredible leader. She works with very large companies. Bossacademy is not her core audience. There's she could bring all the training in the world to what we do, and it wouldn't help her grow her business. However, she still wants to support us by bringing her training and coaching, because she tells me all the time, she goes, everything you do to sacrifice for us, I want to help you. But it's not just me, because I know there's other people in there that she's connected with that have helped her from an emotional standpoint or from an advice standpoint. And so there's this sense of loyalty where she wants to help us grow, even though we're not her prospect. We're not a client that would ever work with her, because she just works with very large Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies. And I think that speaks volumes to the fact that she doesn't need there to be she doesn't need to be a part of this to make money. She needs to be a part of this because she loves the camaraderie, the community, and the collaboration that
Well, and
comes
it's
from it.
also finding your home, your safe home to be,
Mm-hmm.
to let
That's right.
all of that down so you can be that person up there.
Yeah. She's dealing with, an ill family member, and she lost her father, and all these people that have she's been facing all these struggles in her life, and the people that reached out and showed the most caring were people from our community, and it's like that's what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just think about the person who had the surgery, right?
Oh, David. Yeah.
Right? Like his story is his story, and he's gonna do end up where he ends up. But sure is nice to have a few friends along the way, just to
Absolutely.
kind of hold
Yeah.
your hand and know that someone's caring about you, and you know, and that's the bigger thing, is that how many people have made huge successes of their life despite they had no one there. Like every
Yeah.
turn they're getting pushed down, every turn, like, what are you doing? Every turn you can't do that, and you're going. And yet your blueprint said you were going to be here,
Yeah.
even though your
David's a great
foundation
example.
was sucks.
David's another example of somebody that his client base is much larger than our membership, and but yet he stepped up and wanted to be a sponsor. And I was kind of blown away at that gesture, because I'm like, well, this isn't, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of clients from this, but he wanted to support this because he saw what we were doing to help others. And I think that that's important, that we remember that sometimes we're a part of things that are much bigger than we realize, and it's making an impact. And this isn't a commercial for Bossacademy, but it's more about the broader idea that sometimes we need to step up and support those that are helping others,
Mm-hmm.
for the right reasons. And so it's like he stepped up as a sponsor, and he's been a sponsor for 2 years, and I'm just blown away at everything he's done, even though we aren't going to ever probably feed him a lot of business.
But see, that's where I think I keep coming back. Whether I get a client from Boss or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This is where I want to, as they say, tithe my time,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
because I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep growing, and I'm going to get those nuggets of gold that I can share to my community.
Absolutely. That's
Right.
beautiful.
And it's
Well
just,
said, Adele.
and it's just like you were saying about how that lady took what you were teaching her and made a course of it. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I could have made the course, but it wasn't in mine to do. So
Yeah.
have at her.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think it's great that she took what I taught her and leveraged it. I just couldn't believe that she felt that she was qualified to do it. And then when she pointed out to me that she's way more qualified than the people that are teaching it, that are learning from her, I was like, oh man, a little light bulb clicked. I'm like, that's the secret right there. Because there are some people out there who say, you shouldn't be a coach unless you have done this, this, and this. And, it's like you've, helped somebody make $10 million or whatever. Well, sometimes people that are coaching people that are not where they are. Now, does that mean that they couldn't hire somebody else who has more experience? Sure. But, if I'm hiring somebody who's a coach that knows more than I am in a space, and I get to the point where I become better because of them, that's a beautiful thing. And this is
And
why
it,
imposter syndrome and things like that are kind of ridiculous, because we sometimes put limitations on ourselves.
I knew that was
hit
coming.
that mute button. So sorry.
See,
But yeah,
that that
we put
that shows that you're a pro at this, because I would
I
never have thought about a mute button.
actually have a cough button over here, but it's out of reach. So yeah, got to do it.
But I think so. So we brought up Tony Robbins, right? And it's funny because people are like, "Oh, Tony, Tony," and I'm like, "Who's Tony?" This is back in the day, and they're like, "Tony Robbins." I go, "Oh, I knew him as Anthony." And they go, "What?" I go, "When he started getting big, he shortened his name." And they're like, "You knew him as Anthony?" And I go, "Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how long he's been in the game."
yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Hey,
Yeah,
listen, I still have the original. Well, actually, I got rid of the cassettes. So my original program I got was off an infomercial years ago. It was early 2000s, and
mm-hmm,
I ended up buying the cassette tapes,
mm-hmm.
and then I ended up later upgrading to the CDs, and the CDs were kind of a game changer. I still have them. I still to this day
Wasn't
have
that
that
the
original.
Giant Within?
Nope, it was Personal Power.
All right. Okay. I have this. I still have the tapes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have the Giant Within too, but I've got a lot of his programs. I don't really listen to him much anymore, but the thing I loved about Tony, I remember I was going to an event over in Dallas, and I was pretty stressed out about my life and going through this divorce, and I'd given up the podcast. And I remembered I was listening to one of his CD programs in the car, and he was talking about how, well, if you're driving, pull over, but I want you to make a list of things you're grateful for. I pulled over to the side of the road, and Adele, I sat there. I had a little notebook in my car, and I sat there looking at that notebook, and I couldn't come up with anything. Uh, it was silly, but at the time, I was so negative and so like kind of broken,
Yeah.
and I struggled, and I finally came up with one thing. I think it was started with my kids, and I put my kids down,
Yeah.
and I come up with another one, and sat there staring at the paper, couldn't come up with anything. I started driving again, started listening to CD, and he goes, "Did you do it? Did you come up with it?" And so I pulled over again, looked at that paper, couldn't come up with anything. And I finally kept driving, and I turned the CD off because I kind of felt like I was, letting Tony down, Anthony.
Yeah.
And I got to my destination. I remember pulling in the parking lot, and I sat there thinking, man, this is a really dark time if I can't come up with anything to be grateful for. So I started writing everything, like my health, my kids, and next thing you know, I mean, I'm filling up a page, and then I'm filling up another page, and it just it was a fake story that I was telling myself that I had no reason to be grateful. But just snapping out of it and starting with one, starting with two, give myself a little bit of freedom to take a break, and then coming back to it, all of a sudden it's like the floodgates open. So now when I drive my kids to school, I will often ask them, "What are you grateful for?"
Mm-hmm.
And my son's 15, my daughter's 13, and they hate being asked that question, at this age, except for once they start their list. It's amazing to see the shift. And my daughter will go from being kind of, tired and unengaged to, by the time she get ready to get out of the car, I see a different kid. Just because you force them to go, you know what, you have reasons to be grateful. No matter how bad today is, no matter how things aren't perfect, you have reasons to realize that you are a one percenter, because we all are. If you live in the United States or Canada, even if you're poverty stricken, you are so better off than a lot of people in other parts of the world. And we always have to remember that there's reasons to be grateful. There's somebody else who would trade places within us in a heartbeat.
Well, and I think it comes back to expectations instead of intentions.
Yeah.
Our expectation is we're supposed to be living this life of da da da. But our intention is, well, I don't know. What am I aiming at? What, I don't know. I'm just firing things off and seeing what lands. Well, how's that working for you? It doesn't.
No, but
Right?
I think if you can remember that you have reasons to be grateful and blessed, that life is so much richer.
Well, but it brings it back to someone saying, we give meaning to a day. And it's like, what? Well, we say it's a sunny day. No, it's a day. It's a day. We
Yeah.
put that it's a beautiful day. We put it's a sunny day. Oh, we put it's a raining day. No, it's a day. How are you expanding that day is how what you are filling up with, right? And I was like, interesting. Because the
You may
sun
have.
always shines. It depends on, are you seeing the sun or are you not seeing the sun? It's always
There's
there.
a woman by the name of Marissa Peer. She's a psychologist out of the United Kingdom. In fact, a lot of people that are hypnotherapists in the United States and Canada learn from Marissa Peer through her programs. She has made a massive impact on a lot of people that are in that space. But I saw her do a TED Talk years ago, and actually, this was when Bossacademy Radio was still up. It was still a podcast, and I saw this TED Talk, and she did this demonstration on stage where you may have seen this exercise, but it's one of my favorites. We always talk about how the human brain is like a computer, right? It's capable of all these things. Well, I actually think the human brain is also one of the most dangerously weak tools out there because it's easily manipulated, corrupted. They fall for sleight of hand, where people are
Mhm.
potential scam customers all the time because of it. So she had this great demonstration, and she says, "Okay, I want you to imagine you're holding a lemon in your hand." She didn't have a lemon in her hand; she just holding her hand out. She goes, "See that lemon?" She goes, "Now I want you to imagine you're cutting that lemon in half." And so anybody who's listening to this right now, I want you to do this. Act like you're cutting that lemon in half. Look at it. You see the pulp inside. You see the yellow rind, and it's a beautiful lemon. Now pull it up to your nose and act like you're smelling it. Can you smell that lemon? And it's like, if you ask an audience, I've done this with sales coaching, and it's
Yeah.
like, can you smell that lemon? And people, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now take a bite of it. Just me even mentioning taking a
I
bite of
know.
it, my jaw clenches and my mouth starts watering. Now, that lemon isn't real. It doesn't exist, but my mind sure thought it did because I told it was a lemon. And it knows what a lemon tastes like. It knows what a lemon smells like. So in my mind, that lemon was as real as could be. And my point here is what we feed our brain, it believes. If we say you're a loser, guess what?
Yeah.
Great things don't happen. You might stumble across some nice things, but if you're a failure, you're probably not going to do well. There's a reason the elite athletes and fighter pilots and some of these people, they come across as really cocky and arrogant, but it's because you have to feed yourself a certain level of positive messaging to reach an elite level. And I'll tell you what, when I was at my lowest point, I was feeding myself a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
And now, it's like I grew up believing self-deprecating humor was a way to always avoid, being picked on. Because if I'm picking on myself first, then there's no way you can hurt me, right? It's a beautiful defense mechanism until it becomes something where it's a crutch and it becomes something where the negative self-talk starts to hurt you.
Well, it's
Today,
also
I
a lie.
try everything I can to avoid calling myself anything negative because my mind doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great lesson for anybody out there watching this. What you feed your brain, it goes beyond just in the moment, hey, I want to lift myself up and say I'm pretty today or I'm awesome.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger than that because what you feed your brain doesn't know any better and it trusts you. It believes you.
Well, and that's why words are so powerful
They are.
because I don't know if you know Michael Loge, and he was saying affirmations are the biggest lark out there.
Oh, affirmations? Yeah.
Yeah, because he says I can stand in the mirror saying like, you know, I'm a slender guy and I'm this and I'm that. And he goes, it ain't happening. I'm a big guy. I'm not this skinny little dude. Could I lose 20 pounds? Sure. I'm still not gonna be thin,
Yeah.
right? And so he's like, no, he goes, feed your brain with nurturing, not affirmations that are lies, anyways, right? Anyways,
Yeah.
this is
And
mm-hmm,
I think you can feed yourself positive affirmations that are realistic. If
mm-hmm,
if you say if I said I'm a black woman, well, I'm never going to be a black woman, right?
Well,
But
not
if I
this
say
lifetime.
that I'm somebody that wakes up every morning and works hard, and that's,
Yeah.
you can feed yourself a positive message that does make a positive impact, but it's got to be something that's plausible, because your mind, as easy as it is to manipulate your brain, we're not going to believe something that is impossible to believe.
Well, and I also want to put a caveat on that is you're like as you said, right? Your body and your brain doesn't know the difference between a lie and the truth. So if you are feeding yourself anything, make sure it's your truth, not the truth of conditioning or beliefs or outside forces. Your truth.
Yeah,
So this has been
yeah, absolutely.
fabulous. How would you want what last minute or little nugget of gold do you want to leave the audience with, other than join Boss Academy?
Well, of course, join Bossacademy. I mentioned it earlier, but it's something that's been coming up a lot lately. This idea of being a resource and making an impact on others. They say that if you're on an airplane and there's a problem, put your oxygen mask on first before you put other people's on, and I truly believe that. However, I think that if we really want to be successful, I have a philosophy when it comes to selling that our job is to get the other person talking, get them engaged, get them interested in what we do. There's a couple ways to do that. Primal in nature, tell good stories, ask
Mm-hmm.
good questions, and if you're interested, I've got a free download for four
Yep.
question types. I'm happy to share with your audience. But the other thing is be a resource, be selfless. Be somebody that is willing to help somebody else out, even if you're not necessarily going to immediately benefit from it. Because I will tell you that the times I've served the most are the times that it comes back and pays off tenfold.
That's amazing.
Thanks, Adele. I
Thank you for
really
being
enjoyed
on this
this.
show. Once again, Adele Bernard from Transition Clarity. Our guest today is Paul Kirch from Boss Academy. And I'm going to say it again. Please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Adele.
Wow, what a fabulous conversation with Paul Kirsch. Check out the notes. We'll have all his detailed information, how to connect with him, all the Boss Academy. He also has that free offer of, the 4 steps to sales. And I think we touched on a lot of topics. Um, and mostly it's about the connection. Make the connection. The sales will come. Be in the networking group, even if it's not networking, for the camaraderie, for the nuggets of gold as an entrepreneur that you might be needing for your next call or for your next opportunity. As he's talked about Boss Academy, like some great people are in there and you just don't know where that nugget of gold is going to come, and we're grateful. I'm grateful to be in the group, to know who's in there and know that they're doing their shining their light um, to the world the best they can in the way that they can. And that's my thing to everybody: shine your light how you need to shine your light for the best of the world. The world's asking for us all to step up. So again, my name is Adele Bernard, Transition Clarity. This has been an authentic conversation. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.